Greetings, welcome back to the landscape. Where do I start today? So I'm on a walk today, following a water course. It's somewhere I've been to before, but only very briefly. So I had a rough idea about what was here. And I think that's an early tip to share with you guys. It's that I think trying to pitch up to a brand new location and create stunning pictures, I'd say that's pretty rare. Certainly in my experience anyway, it's pretty rare to be able to do that. So I've been here before, I've had a little bit of a womble around, I've gone home, and I've come back out today because there was a particular notion that was running around in my head. Now I've walked away from my subject because it's very loud. You might even be able to hear it in the background. But the notion that I had running around in my head was something that Simon Baxter said about woodland. And that is, if you see a tree in a wood that interests you, work out what it is about the character of that tree that interests you and fill the frame with that character. Kind of seems obvious, doesn't it? But I'm going to try and do the same with moving water. Now, regular subscribers and viewers, you'll know I'm a sucker for moving water. It's just a subject I really enjoy photographing. Not that I think any of them might add to my portfolio. Yeah, there are one or two. In fact, there are one or two images of moving water that I've sold as well. So, the season that we're in at the minute is spring. Just move around so my face is illuminated. So we're in the spring, early spring. So we've got that fresh spring green. There's just a little bit of a bite in the air, that freshness that you don't get in the summer. And what I'm trying to do is capture the atmosphere of the place. Atmosphere equals character, if you like. So I'm trying to combine the fresh spring green with what I can hear, moving water, and put the two together. And I've got to admit to you, it's really been quite a struggle. And I've tried to avoid that cliche of capturing water through, say, a foliage from a tree or whatever. I actually want to have, as near as damn it, the two things separate. And I found a view here. It sort of works. In fact, now the sun's come out, it probably works slightly better. So I'm going to set the video camera up. I'm just going to talk you through it. Then we'll get the big camera out and we'll take the image and I'll show you the result. And I'll leave it to you to judge whether it worked or not. Now, obviously the field of view of the video camera is quite wide, but the portion I'm trying to capture is this falls at the back with the tree up above. What I'm trying to do is give the green foliage on the tree and the water space to tell their own individual parts of the story, but at the same time I want them to interlock. So I've landed on this excuse me, quite deliberately, because the shape of the way in which the branch comes down actually sits into sort of the chair slot that the water creates by coming down and then across. And I'm hoping that that really comes across on the video. I'm sorry, I'm croaking because I'm having to shout. There is one aspect of this scene that I don't particularly like. There is a single branch right at the bottom more of a twig really. It's got no leaves on it. Now it's very, very small in the frame, and when I get to post-processing, I might decide, do you know what, leave it. But I am already thinking that I might try and remove it in software. Now with that notion in my head, what I will try and do is make sure that that little twig is well away from the water, so that when I do try and clone it out, I'm not having to battle with droplets of water and so on and so forth. Now on the subject of water, I think there are two things. A, there's quite a bit of glare coming off the surface of the water, so I will look to use a polarizer. The only problem with that is that in relation to the direction that I'm looking at, the sun's actually way, way, way over there. And a polarizer works at its best with the sun at 90 degrees. So realistically, I'd want the sun to be up here, but it isn't. So I will try a polarizer. If it doesn't work, I'll put it away. In relation to the water, now clearly we can all hear it quite clearly, or I certainly can. But I've sat on a rock and I've watched the water. And I hope it comes across on the video that the water comes down, if you like, into the seat of a chair and then down again. And the point at which it goes over the second lip, I can see bits of water being thrown out. To me, that adds to the character of the water, so I will aim to keep it. Now, if I am going to use a polarizer, I'm probably going to have to mess around with ISOs and apertures and try and get the shutter speed up a little bit so that I can capture the water being thrown out as it goes over the second lip. Now, right now, the sun is in. When I was doing my preamble, the sun actually came out, and it actually added a lot of warmth into this scene. So I think my preference would be for the sun to come out again and add that extra element of warmth, just to lift the yellow in the leaves and really put across that idea of spring green. So I think when we get the big camera out, I'll break with tradition. I won't show you the back of the camera. I'll just talk you very quickly through what I'm doing, and then we'll look at the final image. And as I said earlier, I'll leave you guys to be the judge as to whether I've been successful or not. So let's get the big camera out. So I've spent about 10 minutes faffing with this. The first key consideration was height, getting the camera lower so that I actually had separation between the green up above and the water below. The two weren't clashing. I have used a polarizer. It does take a little bit of the glare off the water. It allows me to see through the water to what's underneath a little bit more clearly. It also adds in a touch of warmth, which, based on the season that we're in, that kind of seems an appropriate thing to do. Now the sun has just come out again, and yeah, it's doing the same. Even right now in some slightly dappled sunshine, the water is really bouncing the sunlight off. So the water is actually appearing to be overexposed. And I can't be doing with all this exposure blending, and no, I want to try and capture it all in one go. So I'm going to go with the software option of warming the image up afterwards, rather than wait for the sun to come out. Although it's actually quite nice right now. It's sort of not quite in and not quite out. Let me just grab this image. So even without the sun out, I found that the water was blowing out quite significantly, and I was also losing some of that notion of movement. So in camera, I've underexposed by 1 1/3 stops. I'd like to say that that was intuitive. It wasn't. I underexposed and watched the histogram, and then I took a couple of test frames until I landed on a shutter speed that captured something of the water being thrown out. So I'm cool on that one. In terms of frame type and frame size, I thought a traditional 3x2 would work, but in fact 16:9 actually works really well to contain both our subjects and the idea. I think because the water movement is relatively stretched, it sort of suits that frame size, that stretched frame size, if that makes any sense. Now I know in RAW that I can play with the crop later on, but I'm a stickler for trying to get it as right as I possibly can in camera. So I've deliberately chosen 16:9 in camera, and then I've framed up as precisely as I can to that frame size, so that hopefully I come away with one result that I can then play with. Now the sun has gone back in behind the clouds, so am I going to wait or am I going to take this frame? Let's take this frame, because we're going to rely on software. So we're at ISO 100, f8, 1/25 of a second, minus 1/3 of a stop. Boom. One last technical point, focus. So I focused on the branch that's nearest to me. I've then selected an aperture that enables both the branch and what's behind it to be sharp. And the way that I've checked that is to use the depth of field preview function that I have set up on this camera to make sure that it was appropriate for the items that I want in the frame to be sharp. Now again, that all mixes into the exposure equation, how much water motion to capture, etc., etc. So, you know, sometimes I know that aperture and exposure and ISO are related, and sometimes it's a balancing act between the three. But I found that balancing act quite easily and quite simply. I tend to shoot in aperture priority. I just find it's a mode that works for me. So I selected the aperture and then played with exposure compensation in order to get both the exposure and the range of motion that I was looking for. Now I think this frame's going to work, so I'm going to put the image up on the screen right now. So I hope you liked that image, and I hope that the explanation, both of the content, the why, and what I actually did in camera to capture it, I hope that made sense, and I hope that it was useful. I'm going to call this video done here and now. If you like landscape photography and you're not a subscriber, please do consider becoming a subscriber. It's free and you can unsubscribe at any time. If you've liked today's video, please do give it a like on YouTube. Your support and encouragement is gratefully appreciated. So I'm going to go and have a play with this watercourse and see what else I can find. So until we're out in the landscape again, everybody take care, stay well and stay safe. Cheerio, see you soon. Spend all day here, it's nuts.